Eerieville-Wondrous Destiny-Ch. Chapter 30.
Attack the castle, Orion commanded. The dragon he was riding instinctively flew towards him to pick him up. Then they made their way into the castle gate from above. They were met by Lord Darkshadow and the sages' magic spells. The dragons threw fire from their mouths onto the sages. It was the first wave of attack of the battle. Orion could feel the hot wind blowing from the dragon's fire he was riding on his face. It was way hotter than he was comfortable with, but this was a battle. He knew pain would come. Lord Darkshadow and the sages stopped the fire with a magic shield, but the heat of the fire did reach their hands and faces. "Ah," exclaimed one of the sages. "It's hot." "It's called fire," said Lord Darkshadow sarcastically, deflecting the embers with his hand. "Umatruum Spectris," he yelled, casting a spell. The spell made his protective barrier turn into a magical mirror, and the fire being thrown upon them began to be deflected back into the air, hitting some of the dragons of Orion's legion. Some of the dragons that were hit cried, Shrierek, and lost balance in midair. The soldiers riding them had to hang on tighter in order to avoid falling down. "Where is Fiamma?" yelled Lord Darkshadow. "He should be here any moment," said a sage. "He was notified to come before you and to prepare for battle. But what is the urgency, Lord Darkshadow? We've still got this under control. The sages that broke into our plasma barrier are most likely on their way here now, and we need to be ready to fight them, genius." "Oh," the sage replied with a flat face. He was speechless after that. Sarcastic responses were Lord Darkshadow's trademark. Lord Darkshadow was correct. Capra and Raven were walking towards the castle. "Why are we walking instead of running there, Capra?" asked Raven. "The battle has begun. Are you frightened?" "I'm studying their response behind the walls," Capra replied. "I don't understand," said Raven. "This is no time for studying. It's time to battle. You taught me that." "There is chaos inside the castle walls. They should be sending in their full force any time now," he replied. "How do you know there is chaos in there?" asked Raven. "Because they were not expecting that we would break into their protective barrier," he replied. "At least not so soon." "Which gives us the element of surprise," Raven argued. "We should charge there and help our friends now." "Go if you want. Nobody is stopping you," exclaimed Capra, still looking at the activity behind the castle walls, calculating in his head many possible scenarios. Meanwhile, inside the castle walls, Commander Fiamma finally stepped out towards the battlements. "About time," exclaimed Lord Darkshadow, seeing him come out. "Did we interrupt your beauty nap, Commander Fiamma?" "I wasn't expecting them to break in so soon," he replied. "It seems like you and your sages are becoming weaker." "Stop making excuses and summon your dragons," yelled Lord Darkshadow. "We've been holding these trying to get in, for you, Princess Fiamma. Are you ready to fight now? Or are you and your dragons still putting on makeup?" Commander Fiamma growled, showing his teeth. "I know what I have to do, Lord Shameshadow." He then made a loud, high-pitched cry towards the other side of the mountain. Shirek, he summoned his dragons. His shrieks sound just like the shrieking dragons make. A piercing loud, high-pitched, raspy growl. Based on his bipedal humanoid stance, it is easy to forget that he too is part dragon himself. Some faint shrieks and dragon cries were heard from afar the opposite side of the castle in response, up in the austere mountains, and they were becoming louder. They were, without a doubt, getting closer. Soon, tiny silhouettes were seen flying towards them, coming from the mountains. They became larger and larger until they could be seen clearly. They clouded the skies and it became darker. They were the dragons of Commander Fiamma. They were different from the ones Orion and his legion were riding. Fiamma's dragons were a darker shade of earth colors with red stripes and dots instead of orange. They soon landed at the castle and roared. Orion and the legion widened their eyes as they saw their menace now close to them. Meanwhile, Capra and Raven were close to the castle. "We wait here," said Capra. "What? Wait? Perhaps you missed the immense legion of enemy dragons that just arrived at the castle," Raven replied. "The sages are expecting us. If we wait here, they will get confused," Capra replied. Orion needs our help, said Raven, raising his voice. Patience, Raven, responded Capra. Crimson, Mr. Napoleon, Mrs. Layla, and Icones were hiding beneath the bridge next to the castle gate, waiting for the right moment to strike. This is what we will do, Raven, said Capra finally. Go meet Crimson under the bridge and wait for my signal. When I give the signal, break through the gate and go inside to battle. Understood. Yes, master, he replied to his teacher. Go now, said Capra. Raven sprinted towards the bridge and met Crimson and company and informed him of Capra's plan. Meanwhile, up in the air, above the very edge of the castle walls themselves, the dragon forces were about to meet head-on. Shriek, shriek, shriek. Fiamma's dragons extended their red wings and took flight, their piercing eyes set on Orion's dragons. They began to drool and smoke would come out of their nostrils. Capra, still analyzing Lord Darkshadow and the sages from a distance, was glued to his ground. Soon, the dragons on both sides finally clashed. Shrieks were heard, and the fire from both sides of the dragons was so intense, it created a black cloud of smoke, and nobody could see which side was injured, and which side had the upper hand in combat. Blood from dragon scratches fell to the ground. Lord Darkshadow, who was standing on the tip of the castle wall's upper part, seemed to have his eyes on the outside of the castle floor, fighting the smoke and looking for the sages that broke through the barrier, but Capra knew this and was hiding well. After several minutes, Lord Darkshadow seemed to grow impatient. Sages, ready yourselves to fight with full force, exclaimed Lord Darkshadow. It seems that the sages that broke through the barrier are either scared, hiding, out smoking, or ran away at the might of Commander Fiamma's dragons. I'm tired of waiting. Let us finish this battle once and for all. Attack the orange dragons, but don't kill them. They will be put to the Mosquito Queen's service. Ha 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 ha. Lord Darkshadow then glanced towards Commander Fiamma. It seems like you'll have a full schedule training dragons ahead of you, Fiamma. Unless you're too busy eating and beauty sleeping, I'll be glad to train them myself. Ha ha ha. Fiamma growled in response. Lord Darkshadow and the sages began to throw power balls of magic at Orion's dragons. Capra then finally signaled Raven from a distance to break the door down. Raven then threw a fireball onto the wooden door gate, and it burned to the ground. Only the metal brackets holding the door remained. Capra then flew towards the air where the dragon battle was at and began to deflect and block the magic power balls that Lord Darkshadow and the sages were throwing at Orion's dragons. So it was you, Capra, exclaimed Lord Darkshadow as he saw Capra enter the battle scene midair. I should have guessed your little secret music spell. Happy to see me, Mr. Snaky Shadow? Capra asked, smiling. Delighted, replied Lord Darkshadow, laughing. I was beginning to get bored here. Finally, a decent match. They continued fighting midair, Capra, the dragons, Lord Darkshadow, and the sages. Meanwhile, Crimson's party was met by mosquito soldiers at the other side of the castle gate once the gate was thrown down. Crimson drew his sword and charged towards them. He was the first to give the war cry, slashing sword to sword with the mosquito soldiers' resistance. Some of them were hovering with their buzzing wings. Their needle beak was frightening enough, but they also carried several swords and shields with their multiple limbs midair. The rest of the party soon caught up with Crimson. Raven used magic and martial arts skills, Icones used magic as well, and Mr. Napoleon and Mrs. Layla used sticks, but the otter pair was being protected by Raven and Icones in battle. How does it feel to finally fight Icones? Raven asked, smiling. Awkward, she replied frankly, but with a giggle. Do not feel guilty, my friend, Raven said. You're fighting to protect the lives of many. There was a fight on the ground and a fight in the air. Orion's trooper commander Elias cried. He was scratched by one of Fiamma's dragons as he burned the dragon Elias was riding. The burnt dragon fell to the ground and Elias was caught by Fiamma's dragon. Elias, cried Orion as he approached to rescue his friend. Eat him, Fiamma instructed his dragon. No, Take him inside, said Lord Darkshadow. His blood is for the Mosquito Queen. Fiamma growled and then commanded his dragon to place Elias inside a tower in the castle. The dragon obeyed Fiamma. Meet your end, Dark Dragon. Orion exclaimed as flew to fight Commander Fiamma. Eaha! Orion let out a fierce battle cry while shedding tears for his comrade, Elias. Orion clashed with Fiamma and nailed him to the ground. Several dragons came to aid Commander Fiamma. Lord Darkshadow then noticed Crimson's fight down at the castle gates as well, and he sent some sages to aid the battle on the ground. 3 sages to the gate, exclaimed Lord Darkshadow. 3 sages went there and began to fight against Crimson's company. Raven, despite having excellent magic and martial arts skills, began to feel overwhelmed by the power of 3 sages against them. Retreat, exclaimed Raven. No, cried Crimson. We're so close. It's not the time to be a hero, boy. At least not yet, yelled Napoleon. Ah, Crimson yelled, hitting a mosquito soldier with its sword. Let's retreat then. We need to protect our party, Raven said. They began to retreat slowly, but were still fighting their enemy up front while walking backwards. If they turned away, they would be caught and injured. Could this be it? Crimson thought to himself. Did they beat us? This isn't how it was supposed to go down. We were supposed to win, enter the castle, and rescue Princess Molly. His breathing became heavier and felt a lump in his throat. His knees began to weaken, shaking a little. The ground's gravity seemed to be pulling him down with exponentially increasing force, and soon he felt like he was going to meet the very same soil he was standing upon. Just as a cloud of darkness embraced Crimson's field of vision, they heard many screams and war cries coming from the trees behind them. What? Asked Napoleon as he glanced back. I can't believe this. Crimson then turned around as well and saw Socrates with a party of bears, wolves, humanoid creatures, and other forest creatures charging their way. It's Socrates, Mrs. Layla cried. Push forward, cried Crimson, who noticed the additional forces coming to their aid. Soon, Socrates and company reached the gate and fought alongside Crimson's company. I'm glad you joined the battle, exclaimed Crimson to Socrates. I'm actually very thankful for that, sir. Crimson had a huge and bright smile on his face and felt a spirit of strength take hold of his body once more. Thank me later, kid, when we win, Socrates replied. Or better yet, thank these people. They went into the forest and convinced me to come fight. Who are they? Asked Crimson. We were prisoners inside the castle, one of the humans said. Princess Molly set us free inside the dungeon. Princess Molly, exclaimed Crimson. How is she? We have to get her out of there. Yes, said the human. She is alive. We promised her we would come back and save her. It was quite difficult for them to have a conversation while fighting a battle. They had to yell and avoid the attacks from the mosquito soldiers and sages they were fighting at the same time. As soon as we get through, I'm going to go save her, said Crimson. They continued battling the mosquito soldier forces and the sages, and now with the help of Socrates and the others. They were able to push through into the castle gate, now finally breaching it. Raven battled the 3 sages by himself, throwing power balls of magic and spells. Crimson and company fought the mosquito soldiers. Some of the defeated mosquito soldiers fell off the wooden bridge into the maroon-stained swamp below. Together, they pushed them through the castle patio entrance all the way back. Soon, they were almost at the castle door entrance itself. Lord Darkshadow was seeing this. He saw Socrates and company join Crimson, and thus he sent more sages to the ground battle immediately. You, and you. Lord Darkshadow pointed at 7 sages, go to the ground battle. Now, the 7 sages went to the ground. Raven heard Lord Darkshadow from afar. Also, warn Lady Annalise Gertrude and summon Greybite. Lord Darkshadow continued. A sage went inside to do as he was told. Quick, Crimson. This might be the only chance you'll get to get inside the castle. New forces are coming to fight here against us. We'll hold them off for you, but you must go in now, exclaimed Raven. I'll go in now. Cover me, exclaimed Crimson as he pushed his way into the castle door. Raven and the others fought in front of him, pushing the mosquito soldiers aside, thus allowing Crimson to go through. He was soon at the castle entrance door. He opened it and went inside the castle itself. Icones went in with him. The other 7 sages arrived at the ground battle. The mosquito soldiers and them tried to go in and stop Crimson, but Icones used a powerful translucid barrier spell to stop them. Quick, go. We'll hold them for you, exclaimed Icones, saying farewell. Thank you, Icones. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for coming all the way here. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for being my real, true friend, said Crimson. Promise me you will come back, Crimson, said Icones. For the love I have for this land and its inhabitants, I promise I will come back to you, my dear friend, replied Crimson. I'm so glad I met you, Icones. I hope we party together after this. I hope so too, she replied. A wonderful destiny awaits us, my friend. For our destiny, Crimson exclaimed, drawing his sword. He then turned and faced the interior of the castle. Its walls were made of earthen gray bricks. The smell of trapped swamp was introduced into his lungs. A wide round-up staircase was in the middle. Behind, 2 armed mosquito soldiers began to hover towards him from the opposite side of the entrance room. Molly, here I am, he whispered. He charged inside the castle alone.